What's good, Horror? This is your boy Horror Gamer back with another video for you, and as you can tell, we are diving right back into Resident Evil City of the Dead. So, without further ado, let's get it, guys. Let's go. That's right, guys. The last time we was in this book, Leon and Claire had just started going into Raccoon City. So that's about where we're at now. But before I get into that, I just want to take a minute to, as you guys can tell, your boy Horror Gamer isn't in Horror Haven. Your boy Horror Gamer is actually at the beach. I've been at the beach for the past week, but haven't been really uploading because I needed this time. You know what I'm saying? I needed this time off. I needed to recharge the old batteries and get everything back into perspective. And this is usually the beach, this is usually the trip that we do every year. It's a once a year thing. So this year, instead of like pumping out videos like I did last year, I kind of wanted to take a step back and actually kind of enjoy the trip, and without, you know, YouTube and without the podcast and stuff. I kind of just went on vacation completely, not just from my 9 to 5, but from everything. But I'm excited to get back into it now with the batteries charged and everything ready to go. I'm definitely ready to get these videos pumping out again. I needed this time, and we're gonna dive right into it. And without further ado, let's just get right back into Resident Evil City of the Dead Chapter 3. Let's see what horrors await our unsung heroes in this chapter. So Leon reached the outskirts of town with 20 minutes to spare, but decided that a hot dinner was going to have to wait. From his previous visits to the station, he knew that there were a couple of vending machines he could hit up for something to tide him over. The thought of stale candy and peanuts didn't sit well with his growling stomach, but it was his damn fault for not taking New York traffic into account. The drive into the city proper did a lot to soothe his still rattled nerves. He passed a few small farms that lay east of town, the fairgrounds and storage sheds, and finally the truck stop that marked the separation of rural Raccoon from urban. Something about knowing that he was going to be patrolling those back roads before long, keeping them safe, gave him a surprising sense of well-being and not a little pride. The early autumn air from the open window was pleasantly brisk, and the rising moon bathed everything he saw in a silvery glow. He wasn't going to be late after all. Within the hour, he'd officially become one of Raccoon's finest. As Leon turned the Jeep down Bybee, heading for one of the main north-south streets that would take him to the RPD building, he got his first hint that something was very wrong. In the first few blocks, he was mildly surprised. By the fifth, he found himself slipping toward a state of shock. It wasn't just strange, it was impossible. Bybee was the first real city street, coming from the east, where buildings outnumbered empty lots. There were several espresso bars and cheap diners, as well as a bargain movie theater that never seemed to run anything but horror movies. That's what the fuck I'm talking about. Your boy Horror Gamer would be there non-stop. And sexy comedies, and was therefore the most popular hangout for the youth of Raccoon. There were even a few generally hip taverns that served micro beer and hot rum drinks for the winter college ski crowd. At 8:45 on a Saturday night, Bybee should be teeming with life. But of the mostly single or two-story shops and restaurants that lined the street, Leon saw that almost all were dark. And in a few that still boasted some light, it looked like there was nobody inside. There were plenty of cars parked along the narrow street, and yet not one person that he could see. Bybee, the hangout for cruising teens and college students, was totally deserted. Where the hell is everybody? His mind grasped for answers as he crept down the silent street, searching desperately for a reason and for some way to alleviate the sweaty anxiety that had once settled over him. Maybe there was some kind of event going on, a church function, like a spaghetti feed, or perhaps Raccoon had decided to take up Oktoberfest, and tonight was the big kickoff. Yet, yeah, but everyone at the same time, it'd have to be one hell of a party. It was then that Leon realized he also hadn't seen a single car on the road since he had that scare with the dog 10 miles out of town. Not one. And with that thoroughly unsettling realization, the next, less dramatic, but distinctly more immediate. Something smelled bad. In fact, something smelled like shit. Geez, dead skunk, and apparently it threw up on itself before dying. He'd already slowed the Jeep to a crawl and had planned to take a left on Powell, just a block ahead, but that horrible smell and the total absence of life were giving him a serious case of the creeps. Maybe he would stop and check things out, look around for some sign of, oh hey. Leon grinned, relief flooding through his confusion. There were a couple of people standing at the corner, practically right in front of him. The streetlight was out on their side, but he could see them in silhouette clear enough. A couple, a woman in a skirt and a big man wearing work boots. As he got closer, he could see by the way they moved, heading south on Powell, that they had to be monumentally drunk. Both of them staggered into the shadows cast by an office supply store and out of sight. But he was going in that direction anyway. No harm in stopping to ask what was going on, or was there? Must have come out O'Kelly's, a pint or two too many. But as long as they weren't driving anywhere, fine by me. I am going to feel stupid when they tell me that tonight's the big free concert or the all-you-can-eat town barbecue. Almost giddy with relief, Leon turned the corner and squinted into the heavy shadows, looking for the pair. He didn't see them, but there was an alley tucked between the supply store and a jewelry shop. Maybe his two drunk friends had ducked in for a bathroom break or something even less legal, like brown chicken wow wow. Just saying. Shit! Leon slammed the brake as a half dozen dark shapes fluttered from the street, caught in the Jeep's headlight like giant whirling leaves. Startled, it took him a second to realize he was seeing birds. They didn't cry out, although he was close enough to hear the brushing of dry wings as they took to the air. Crows enjoying a late-night feast of roadkill. What looked like... oh my God. There was a human body in the middle of the road, 20 feet in front of the Jeep, face down, but it looked like a woman. And judging from the liquid red stains that covered most of the once white blouse, it wasn't some beer-happy college student who decided to take a nap in the wrong place. Hit and run. Some bastard hit her and then drove away. Jesus, what a mess. Leon killed the engine and was half out of the door before his racing thoughts caught him up. He hesitated, 1 foot on the asphalt, the stench of death heavy in the cool air. His mind had latched onto an idea that he didn't want to consider, but knew he had better. This wasn't some training exercise. This was his life. What if it's not a hit and run? What if there's no one around because some psycho gunman decided on a little target practice? Everyone could be inside laying low. Maybe the RPD's on the way. And maybe those drunks weren't drunk. They could have been shot and were trying to get help. He leaned back into the Jeep and fumbled under the passenger seat for his graduation gift, a Desert Eagle 50 AE Magnum with a custom 10-inch barrel. Damn! That's a proof! Israeli export. His father and uncle, both cops, had gone in it together on it. Not standard issue for the RPD, in fact, much more powerful. No shit. As Leon grabbed a clip from the glove box and slapped it in, feeling the solid weight of the weapon in his slightly unsteady hands, he decided it was the best present he'd ever received. He stuffed 2 more clips into his belt pouch on general principle. Each only held 6 rounds. Pointing the loaded Magnum at the ground, he stepped out of the Jeep and took a quick look at his surroundings. He wasn't all that familiar with the Raccoon at night, but he knew that it shouldn't be as dark as it was. Several of the street lights farther along Powell were either shot out or simply not on, and the shadows past the blood-soaked body were thick, and if not for the Jeep's headlights, he wouldn't have even been able to see that. He edged forward, feeling horribly exposed as he left the relative cover of the Jeep, but aware that she could still be alive. It didn't seem likely, but he had to at least check. A few steps closer, and he could see that it was definitely a young woman. Lank red hair obstructed her face, but the clothes were right: denim, pedal pushers, and flats. The wounds were mostly hidden by the bloody shirt, but there seemed to be dozens. Ragged holes in the wet clothes exposed torn, glistening flesh and the crimson of muscle beneath. Swallowing heavily, Leon quickly switched the gun to his left hand and crouched down next to her. The cool, clammy skin yielded easily beneath his fingertips as he touched her throat, pressing his first two fingers against the corroded, I don't know. A few seconds had passed. Seconds that made him feel horribly young and afraid as he tried to remember the procedure for CPR and prayed at the same time that he would feel a pulse. 5 compressions, 2 short breaths. Keep my elbows locked and come on, please don't be dead. He couldn't find it, and didn't want to wait one more second. He tucked his magnum into his belt and grabbed her shoulders to turn her over to check for breathing. But as he started to lift, he saw something that made him lay her down again, his heart a twisted knot in his chest. The victim's shirt had pulled out. The victim's shirt had pulled out of her pants enough for him to see that her spine and part of her rib cage were exposed. Ouch! Fuck me, that sounded like it hurt. The still fleshy knobs of vertebrae shining and red, the narrow, curving ribs disappearing into masses of shredded tissue. It was like she'd been knocked down and chewed on. Information that Leon had disregarded as unimportant suddenly registered, and even as the few facts he had clicked into place, he felt the first inky tendrils of real fear slither in his mind. The crows couldn't have done this. Would have taken them hours, and who the hell ever heard of crows flocking after dark to eat? And that shit smell, it's not coming from her. She died recently, and cannibal murders. No way. For that to happen, for a person to have been killed and then partially devoured on a city street with no one to stop it, and with enough time to pass for scavengers to come, for that to happen, the killers would have had to slaughter most, if not all, of the population. Doesn't seem likely. Fine. And what's that smell? And where is everybody? Behind Leon, there was a low, soft groan, a shuffling footstep, and another sound, a wet sound. It took him barely a second to stand and turn, hand instinctively snatching for the magnum. It was the couple, the drunks, staggering toward him. And they'd been joined by a third, a beefy-looking guy with blood all over his shirt and his hands, and dripping out of his mouth, a rubbery red mouth set into his pasty, rotting face like an open sore. The other man, the big man with the work boots and suspenders, looked much the same, and the V of the blonde woman's pink blouse revealed cleavage that was spotted with darkness, with what appeared to be mold. The trio stumbled toward him, past his jeep, raising pale hands as they emitted moaning, hungry wails. Some dark fluid gurgled out of the beefy man's nose and ran across his moving lips, and Leon was overwhelmed by the understanding that the terrible shitty smell was decayed flesh, and it was coming from them. Holy fuck. And there was another one. Stepping out from a door stoop across the street, a young woman in a stained t-shirt, hair tied back from a slack and mindless face. A groan from behind him. Leon shot a look over his shoulder and saw a youth with dark hair and rotting arms shamble out from the sidewalk. Darkness of an awing's shadow. Leon raised the magnum and aimed at the closest, the man with the suspenders. While his instincts screamed at him to run, he was terrified, but his trained logic continued to insist that there was an explanation for what he was seeing, that he was not looking at the Walking Dead. Controlled procedure. You're a cop. All right, that's far enough. Don't move. His voice was strong, commanding, and authoritative, and he was wearing his uniform. And God, why wouldn't they stop? The man in suspenders moaned again, blind to the weapon pointed at his chest, and still flanked by the others, now less than 10 feet away. Don't move, Leon said again, and the sound of his own panic made him back up a step, darting his gaze left and right, seeing that there were still more of the wailing, lurching people coming out of the shadows. Something grabbed his ankle. No, he shouted, whipped the gun around, and saw that the corpse of the hit-and-run victim was scrambling at his boot, with one blood-crusted hand working to drag her crippled body closer. Her gasping cry of frantic hunger rose to join those of the others as she tried to bite into his foot, bloody mirrors of saliva drooling off her embraided chin, dripping onto the leather. Leon fired into her upper back, the sharp explosive crack of the massive weapon loosening her grip, and at such close range, probably obliterating her heart. Spasming, she dropped back to the pavement, and he turned and saw that the others were less than 5 feet away, and he fired twice more, the round splattering red flowers into the chest of the closest. The entry wound spouted scarlet. The man in suspenders was hardly fazed by the twin gaping holes in his torso. His stagger faltering for only a second, he opened his bloody mouth and gasped out a hissing meow of hunger, hands raised again as if to direct him to the source of relief. Must be on something. Firepower like that could drop an elephant. Backing away, Leon fired again and again and again. And then the empty clattered to the pavement. Another was slammed in, more rounds fired, and still they kept coming, oblivious to the shots that ripped at their stinking flesh. It was a bad dream, a bad movie. It wasn't real, and Leon knew that if he didn't start believing, he was going to die, eaten alive by these. Go ahead, Kennedy, say it. These zombies. Blocked from his Jeep, Leon stumbled away, still firing. Oh, shit. Guys, I'm telling you, I'm reading this and I'm seeing the intro to Resident Evil 2, man. I fucking love this book already. I mean, we're just getting started with the zombies, and I'm already just hella into this book. This author really knows what she's doing. She's got this shit down pat, and I'm super excited to keep reading this and diving into this deeper for you guys. But all right, Horror Horde, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Horror Gamer Reads Ocean City Edition as much as I enjoyed making it for you. And don't forget, if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button along with that ding-a-ling-ding-ding button. That way every time your boy Horror Gamer throws up one of these Horror Gamer Reads, you're in the know. Also, when you're done doing that, go ahead and check out the official Horror Gamer Patreon, where, you know, your boy Horror Gamer does a lot of cool stuff like movie nights and all that other stuff, but you gotta be a patron to get in on that. Then when you're done with all that, head on over to the Z Network and see what kind of cool stuff we got going on out there. Like I said, a bunch of us creators got together and just created something special for everybody to enjoy. So get in on that. Then when all that's out of the way, head on over to wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and check out your boy Horror Gamer and his homegirl Gabby Gore in Horror Haven LLC, the official podcast for the horror fans, where each week your boy Horror Gamer and his homegirl Gabby Gore get together, talk movies, talk horror subjects, whatever it has to do with the genre, we talk about and just have fun doing it. So get in on that. And luckily enough for you guys, your boy Horror Gamer threw all those links in the description box below, so they're leaving the guesswork out of it. You just go, click, boom, and you're there. So, but all right, horror. With all that being said, I do want to say I do apologize if you guys heard a lot of thumping or moaning or footsteps or screaming in the background. I'm staying in a motel, so the walls are paper thin, so you might be hearing some of my neighbors or whatever, but it is what it is. You know, we're almost done. So, all right, horror. With all that being said, I love you guys. Thank you guys. And until next time, this is your boy Horror Gamer saying, as always, don't fear the darkness. Embrace it.